What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Clash of Cosmos, episode 33. I'm Dylan, alongside Mila and Andrew as always. Today, he's back. Brooks, I think you were our first guest that wasn't Andrew to come onto the podcast. And obviously, Andrew became a regular, so it became a little different of a situation. But you're technically our first guest.
All right.
And now you're returning for, I believe this is the second time talking about the Galaxy.
Yeah, second time for this one. Yeah.
Hell yeah. Well, we're happy to have you back. Obviously, Brooks of We Are Soccer. I'll let you plug all your socials and all the stuff at the very end of the episode, and this will be linked with your guys' channel. So if anyone wants to check your guys' stuff out, please go do that. I'm going to plug our channel real quick, if that's all right with you guys. We are at 182 subscribers as of today. So going up and up as the season progresses here for the Galaxy, we will be talking more Galaxy, I promise. I know that me and Andrew have been making appearances on other people's podcasts. I promise we still have one here. But please like, comment, share, subscribe, do all the fun stuff that helps us continue to put out content like this. Anyways, before I kick it on to this main topic, because this is really what dictates the entire Galaxy season, we will be talking about the Haak signing. We'll talk about Nascimento getting extended as well. We have a little USL fun at the very end with Fresno potentially getting their team back for the third time running here in 2028, I believe. And then we will also talk about just the overall MLS atmosphere, as it's been up and down. Messi's got new friends. LAFC's maybe got some addition. We got some USM&T players that have had some moves over to Europe. So we'll get into all that fun stuff. But before we do that, let's have the intro video roll on in. I had a cold brew at 7 at night. That was a mistake. My brain is a little scattered. But along with that scatteredness, the LA Galaxy obviously had their entire world flipped upside down here, with Riqui Puig being out for the entirety of the 2026 season, being put on the season-ending injury reserve, which means that the Galaxy then open up a DP level spot. Brooks, your initial reaction to hearing this news was to text me saying that's a brutal blow. Jeez.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to hear your thoughts on just what this means for the LA Galaxy, or even if you want to take it even broader to the MLS landscape.
Yeah. It's a rough one. Was the surgery botched, or, was the PT not good? I mean, what's the story behind this? Because, it's, we partner with the guy that does a lot of ACL stuff here in Michigan. And if all's going well, I mean, you can get back, between that, 6 to 9 month period, where you're starting to run again, you're starting to really get out there. And, I used to always ask the guy, is it 12 months or more? And he's like, no, but if it's done well, did Ricky start stuff right after he was done with the surgery? There's a lot of questions. And I mean, if the Galaxy botched this one and the doctor did, or whoever he saw, he might have went back to Spain, obviously, to get everything done. But it's rough. And that was your guy that pulls the strings. So, you have obviously an older Diego Fagundes in the midfield that kind of plays more of a 10. He doesn't play a deep line midfield all the time. He may play as like a tucked in winger sometimes, which there's experience there. But you have Edwin Cerrillo, Parente came off the bench and he did what he could. I wouldn't call him a terrific midfielder. I mean, a solid midfield for sure. He had good years at Columbus Crew, but is he that midfielder that Galaxy fans are looking for, that are going to kind of be the big difference maker? Probably not. You're waiting for Elijah Winder to kind of make his step up, right? Like his brother has done all right in Benfica, and you're waiting if that pipeline goes well, because I thought that was a good buy, honestly, for the Galaxy. you didn't see something in your academy that you liked, and you went and got and bought, another good player across the country. So there's a lot of questions. I mean, Justin Haak can play in the midfield as a deep six, but he can also play as center back sometimes. He would show that at NYCFC. So it's a rough one. And, the question I've been texting with a few guys, honestly, is, a few of my buddies that have worked in MLS and, that, follow the game and everything is, if the season doesn't go well, is Greg Vanney's butt on the line? How long does he get? Does he get to the end of the season? I think Will Kuntz is probably, safe. He was in the MLS front office. I don't think, he got you guys a title in his first season as GM, which is huge. But the repercussions of it, you had to, you spent so much money the next season because MLS is just rough with the cap, that it's always a rough year after your MLS run. It's very hard to sustain unless you're Inter Miami and the league plays favorites to you, right? So, but yeah, listen, I don't mind. I like the Hack acquisition. I think that was a good one, and we'll get into that more. But the question is there another big international name that comes in? Marco Reus can't do it all by himself. He came in intentionally just to say, hey, I'm only going to play 90 minutes every now and then, but I'm kind of want to be a more 40 to 60 minute guy, start the game and then come off sometime in the second half or make a late sub and come in and impact the game in the second half. So a lot of questions here and how Greg Vanney and Will Kuntz are going to deal with this at the Galaxy.
Yeah, it's a tough transition. I mean, the Galaxy played all of last season with the idea of a Riqui Puig returning at the very end. It led to the longest winless streak for a club that had just won a title, and it led to a back end of the season that felt unrewarding, even though we did some decent stuff. And we're now sitting at this spot where you've got the DP money, right? We know for this season, Riqui is done. They went back on that decision that they made last year where it's like, maybe he comes back at the end, you can make a late push. They decided this year, we're not going to go through that. We don't know what Ricky's going to be able to give us, even if he comes back with the second surgery. And so now you're looking at this DP money that you've already spent on Riqui Puig that you now can allocate to another player. And Mila, you are Marco Reus's fan club. You are his number one supporter. I think you and me both know that he cannot go a full season being the guy. So I guess my question to you is, do you think the Galaxy need to allocate that DP spot to a 10, an attacking midfielder, or do you think they push that somewhere else like the 9?
I think especially with the talks of Nascimento, the extension of the loan, I wouldn't go and get the 9 now. Maybe if that wants to be a conversation post-loan, I think we can have that conversation. But in terms of the short term, the 1 year that Ricky's out, I think it has to be for that 10 position or the midfield, at least. Offer us some support in that position and the creativity for the most part, because that's what we're going to be lacking. Like Brooks said, he pulls the strings for us. We're gonna need our puppet master to do. I think Royce can be that guy, but legs and his career history, injury history, is just, it goes against him. And you could say that last year was probably one of his most fit years in his career, but we can't rely on that for another season. I don't think it's fair to put that on him.
It's not. Andrew, you are a reporter, so I'm going to lean on you for this one because maybe you've done a little more research than Mila, Brooks, and I. I think we talked about it on the other podcast, but I think you're leaning towards the 10 as well. Is there any names out there that you can think of where you're like, that seems like the guy to go for?
Not necessarily. And the way the Galaxy have been moving, it hasn't necessarily been the most obvious names. Their scouting has definitely expanded a little bit. We see these defenders from South America. We look at players like Emilio Garces, who maybe most people wouldn't have known about, but ended up being a fantastic signing. I've talked about this number a lot. Second fastest player in the world in 2025. That's, a pretty crazy get. So they have a better network. On Talking Galaxy, there was another, I believe, Colombian, a little bit of a younger defender. But the Galaxy have a pretty good, solid network in South America. Gabriel Peck, Mateus Nascimento, those are other they've been betting a lot on youth, on maybe not the obvious names, and that seems to kind of be the MO. Marco Royce does kind of go against that, but it almost feels like, you know, a flashback to a different Galaxy era, a little bit of the marketing there. The deal just kind of worked out for both sides, where he was available and we had a spot for him. He's ready to finally make that move to away from Dortmund, and I feel like the timing was just a bit coincidental there, and that might be what ends up happening for the Galaxy when it comes time for them to make a choice between the 10 or the 9. It's which position has the most impactful option available, and they're gonna have to go for that. To kind of sit under laurels and not make a DP signing even now is kind of a bit of a stretch. You're going a whole half of the season without a DP, and that's, it's going to put you on the back foot. So do you rush a DP signing now? We've kind of talked about the idea of them making a move in the summertime, possibly for a 9. There's that Lewandowski name always thrown around, but there's a couple of different options. And to me, I think the way the Galaxy move and just listening to what's around, Greg Vanney hasn't made a secret of wanting a number 9, other than Nascimento, other than Ramirez. So, and we look at Mateus Nascimento's loan extension. It's rumored to be about 6 months. Details aren't finalized there, but a 6-month deal would open up with a winter window, could possibly open up a move in the 9 position, or we could see something, even totally different than a 9 or a 10. A lot of this might depend on Gabriel Peck maybe making that move to Europe that he wants and to open up another DP spot. And that brings up the question, do you go for maybe a left winger now? Do you stick with whatever version of Puig you're going to get and, have JP? Do you move JP, get a striker? There's just so many other options. And it's, like we're going to be talking about, it's a wacky league. Things that you don't necessarily expect are happening. So predicting it is kind of not maybe so worthwhile right now, but just keeping an eye on those little nuances. And again, whenever the time comes, what are the available options? And you got to trust the new recruiting team to kind of make that best call whenever those pieces do finally fall into place.
Yeah. So I have a question for you, Andrew.
Yeah.
What's interesting is when coaches transition, and I'm looking at the Revs roster right now because I don't know what Mitrovic is going to keep, to be honest with you. Those were Caleb Porter's guys mixed with Arena's guys. The one that kind of makes it interesting, because I think he's kind of been unhappy, honestly, a lot.
You're about to say a name that I've been thinking for a while.
The Revs.
You're about to say a name.
Carlos Hill, at least as your 10. Or you go out and get a kid like Jackson Ewell and bring him back because he was in San Jose. I don't know how much, Mitrovic will want to keep him if he has other ideas. But, if the Galaxy have money to spend, those two are interesting because they kind of bolster your midfield and fill a few needed positions,
Definitely. That's really interesting to think about, yeah.
Carlos is the one that I have been looking at because when you look at metrics across the league, his metrics are phenomenal, and he plays for one of the sides that's just been riddled with turnover, like you were saying, throughout the course of his tenure there. And I think he's 32 or 33 now. 33. I think this is the last year of his contract as well. So if you're talking about true rental, this is as clear-cut rental as it gets. Yeah. Proven MLS Spaniard who plays in the 10. He could do a job. I think his XA numbers / his big chances created were top 5 in the league for central attacking midfielders, like just shy of Messi stuff. So in the league, that's the only guy that I think is obtainable that could be on the radar if the Galaxy get really close to it, right? If you're like down to we need a guy before CCC kicks on, we can just plug and play this midfielder right now. He's the only guy in the league I could see doing that.
Yep.
I'm running out of options outside of that in the league. There's my dream signing is Luna, but like that's just not going to happen. Like they're not getting rid of him. You know what I mean? They're not going to let him walk.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes these acquisitions, these late ones, sometimes the best ones are honestly made within the league and then saving the international spot if you can, to then go in the summertime to acquire someone. Right. So that's why it just makes, like I said, 33 said last year of his contract, Revs may want to dump that or get as much off of that as they can. I mean, obviously you can always exchange Gam and Tam. That's the beautiful part of this is you can, as I call it, MLS monopoly money. You can exchange that back and forth with clubs. So maybe Revs need to buy down contracts for people. So, but yeah, go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, I'm not too sure what else to add. I feel like you guys have nailed that point, pretty square on. That's a really interesting option. Like Dylan mentioned, the backing numbers are there. And it's interesting how that timing is there. Just kind of like, it feels like you mentioned, kind of Hill has half a foot out the door and Galaxy have half a door open. It does feel like that's one of those things that it just ends up lining up and could be a pretty successful one. If, again, we do make it work for the 1 year, 2 years, it'll be interesting to think about that side as well. Is Carlos going to want to go for a contract that short? Do we make it a long contract? And are we now investing in him long term? That still opens up some interesting questions. But like you said, it's almost the stars aligning a little bit there for both sides.
Yeah.
Imagine
The
him
only
playing together
yeah,
when Ricky's healthy. I mean, it'd be
it
interesting.
could be disgusting.
Yeah.
It could
How would we have to structure that though? Is what I've been pondering my
in
head.
what sense? Like the deal itself, or
Yeah, contract. Like what would
he's
that
at
be
the end of his
registered under?
DP, so I mean, I'd assume it'd be some form of trade / interleague transfer. So similar to what we did with Dayon, where you pay, because we've got the money now, that you would pay the transfer fee of whatever it is, and then he just slots in under that DP contract. Because I'm assuming it's the same as what Ricky's cap hold is.
Yeah, we would put Ricky out for the season, put him as a DP
He's
for
already
a
on there.
year.
Yeah.
Okay, and then put DP for a year, and then one of them.
And then his
into a
contract
TAM next year?
ends. His contract is over. So
Yeah,
at the end of the 26. So if he was to restructure it, it would, unless they
wanted to,
change the
yeah.
rules, it would be, he'd be a high TAM. But at 34 years old, like that might be something you're able to do. It might be like a Fagundes situation where you're looking at him and you're like, that your contract, you've done your dues. This was your last big contract with New England. We're going to take you with the idea of we made win now moves. This guy can play win now footy. The only other name I'm going to throw out there, and it's the only one that I think fits because it's the Galaxy and it's a superstar and he's just not fucking playing, is Gio Reyna. I sent it in our group chat earlier. He is consistently not playing for a club that bought him this summer, summer, and he's not getting minutes.
Start getting minutes,
and then he stopped getting minutes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I saw that he started getting minutes, and then I didn't monitor it after that.
So he's not in favor for whatever his coach is, and he's a guy that has to play minutes ahead of this World Cup. An idea of getting him for a year on loan feels like something that could be possible if you're willing to play ball with them, because they're not playing him anyways. And for Gio, that makes sense. It's very similar to De La Torre and his move to San Diego last year, where you're like, maybe you're just not cut out for it. And I don't know really how to feel about Gio because I think he's a phenomenally talented footballer. Like, clearly everyone has seen that, but if you're not playing and you're not playing for a club like that, I can't see that being the trajectory going forward. Like, you don't just bounce back. This is a multi-year thing. So do you cash in now and think he'd come in and be like the most talented player barring Messi in the league? That's crazy. He could be that level of player, a superstar in LA, US player right before a World Cup, and then immediately after a World Cup. Poch has been totally fine with the idea of US players in the league, growing, developing, and then playing at that level. We need a superstar. We were talking, Andrew, on the podcast a little bit about how we haven't had that superstar caliber player. I mean, outside of Ricky. Like, Ricky came from Barca, but still was like, people didn't really know who Ricky was if you didn't watching him like that. But when was the last time we had a superstar? Zlatan?
Yeah.
And even at the end,
there's
Zlatan, but
there's one guy I think they missed out on. I think De La Torre was an interesting one, just like as a deep lying guy, in the midfield. And then honestly, kind of as a 10 or just kind of inverted winger. One that's kind of interesting is, Georgi Mihailovic. I don't know how much he's loving it in Colorado.
Well, he's in Toronto now.
Toronto, yeah, he is now, isn't he? Yeah, he did. So
he was top of mind for me, and I was like, wait, he transferred this last winter.
So say if he's still in Colorado, because Colorado likes to sell and move guys a lot. That would have been an interesting one.
Well, you were right. They did decide to sell and move him. They already moved him to Toronto, and Toronto seems to be. We'll talk about that a little later. They seem to be big spenders this window. So, I want to talk about our signing though. We did spend money. We did make win moves. Now you talked about them a little earlier. Brooks, you've probably watched and scouted this guy for a little bit longer than we have. I can't lie and tell you that I watched a ton of New York City games this year and tell you that I know everything about him. But you might be able to tell our listeners and Galaxy fans a little more about this player in particular. You said he's able to be a little flexible, play in two roles. Do you kind of want to elaborate on what Haak brings to the Galaxy?
I like his physicality standpoint. I think it's a different type of player that like you guys just doesn't like. I just call him like kind of like a fuck you player, where it's like it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like that's NYCFC to a T. You know, like Sands was that way. Jamie Sands and Joe Scally and everything. You know what I mean? Like all those guys are just they grow up, they play physical soccer. You're playing against Red Bull, who don't play a very beautiful style sometimes, and those are rivalry games you play in as a youth player. And then obviously you're from New York. No one likes you. Everyone wants to beat you. I think it's a good move. You just need a kind of someone that had a little more grit, that was just gonna step up. And I mean, obviously the South American players get pretty gritty. That's just how they grow up and the environment they play in as they move up the pro level. But I think he's going to add something that's more of a destroyer six, but can play a little bit or can fill in as a center back if needed at times. It's crazy. NYCFC just didn't want him or let him go. Like that was the crazy part. Because I do think at some point Haak does want to go overseas if he can make it. So,
yeah, that contract that he signed, Andrew, do you want to elaborate on the details of it a little more? Because I think you know him better than I do.
To be honest, I haven't looked at it since really the news happened, but I believe it's a 1+1 option. That salary figure escapes me, but just that alone, at his age as a free agent, that's a super favorable contract for the Galaxy, while at the same time opening up that flexibility a bit for Justin Haak. At the end of the day, he doesn't have the final say. It is a club option. But for the Galaxy, you could think of it as 2 years of solid player who's going to be starting to stepping into his better form in his career. 2 years, he's going to be 26, really kind of a solid player, still with probably some great value in case we do decide to make a transfer. It's, I think, a classic Will Kuntz money move. Great ROI, I feel like, is in the future there. That's just a deal-wise, though. But as an actual signing as a footballer as well, like Brooks mentioned, it's really, really interesting. It opens up a ton of options of where on the pitch he could actually play. I love the idea of him as kind of the destroyer six to alleviate some of the pressure that's been on Edwin Cerrillo, especially last year, where he kind of had to learn on the spot that destroyer role. Didn't necessarily succeed, which looked a little bit funky after Cerrillo played a really solid kind of supporter role in that midfield along Gaston Brugman, along Mark Delgado, along Riqui Puig. He's a great cog, but to put so much of the onus of that midfield onto him, we saw it last year. It's just not as effective, where if you get him that kind of support, that kind of player that Haak can be, I think it'll open up a layer of Edwin Cerrillo that we didn't necessarily see last year. And I think the more of that kind of stuff, just players making their teammates better, it's what's going to build a successful winning roster when you don't have someone like Riqui Puig who's going to score 3 goals a game for you. So those are the kinds of signings that are really exciting. And again, from a money perspective, it's great. From a actual what we need on the pitch perspective, fantastic as well. We've talked a lot about it. I wrote an article about it, just exploring the defensive options as well that a player like Haak opens up. We've talked about that 3 at the back, which Vanny, had so much success with in Toronto, that his, treble winning historic season relied on that 3 back. And that's really what ended up earning him the job at the LA Galaxy, what really got him that recognition. So if he could return to his most successful play style, it's an option he has now. And, he has a really solid 4-4-3 that he's built over the past couple of years with the Galaxy. If he can get them to learn a really strong 3 back, it's Vanny getting to, play with his 2 favorite toys every single game and just deciding which one's better for this opponent. So lots of really interesting things that it opens up. There's just not much not to love about this Haak move.
Agreed. Mila, I have 2 things for you. 1, he wore the number 80, which means that he's no nonsense. To wear the number 80 as a center back is pretty fucking crazy. Yeah. 2, because you're a correspondent Manchester City fan, this is a player that knows that system, the 3-2-5 right? The modernized PEP system. That's what Citigroup play. They all do the same thing. You know it better than most people in terms of what the John Stones role is. Can you kind of elaborate on what that is? Because that's what he's going to play this season, most likely.
I worry about that because that's what I've been hearing, but also from what I've looked into, I'm also like you, Dylan. I haven't watched many NYCFC games, so this is all just what I've seen online. But I worry for what he has to do in that role. It takes a lot of talent on the ball to do that, and
Mhm.
if we're talking about him as a destroyer six, that's nowhere near a John Stones role. But if he's stepping out from the defense and helping Surreal kind of just secure the build-up, then I think there's some potential there. But to ask him to be a Rolls Royce when I haven't really seen it is a little it's a little crazy.
And I don't blame you for that. I'm going to save all of my thoughts on Hack until I do my video breaking down how I think we're going to actually end up playing, which is in that 3-2-5, because I've got so many ideas when it comes to how it can happen. And I just want to play Greg Vanney for like 15 minutes on a standalone video. But I'm very excited about this signing. To your point, Mila, like I don't know anything about him, so I got to watch a bunch of film to really figure it out.
Exactly. We have
his-
some research to do.
Yeah, his advanced stats in terms of passes and assists, like he had 4 assists as a center back last season. That's hard to come by in any league, let alone this league where ball playing and progression isn't like your number one top of mind thing for a team like the Galaxy that we talked about it so much where it was like possession without purpose. This is a player that can give you possession with purpose. Is my very, very 1,000 feet away understanding of
Vague
what
understanding.
Yeah.
No, I think he can definitely do that from the center back. But
Mhm.
I think the worry from what I've seen is if he's to step up into midfield and have to do a little bit more responsibility in that central area is where it could get scary. But if he's playing the balls out the back to our high-flying wingers, hopefully they get back to form this year, then I totally think that he can match that 4 assists. Um, yeah, I got to look into it more, but it should be exciting.
It
I've
should
heard a
be.
lot about his physical prowess and just
Mhm.
what he's able to do in that part of the game. So I think that's what I'm most excited about. We've had Garces who has that perfectly. It just doesn't have the head on top of him, and then Yoshida who just doesn't have the legs to back it up. So
Yeah.
my hope is that he's just right in the middle of both of them, and then we get a good center back, but also a good backup 6 or just someone to fill in next to Surreal in times that we might need it.
Yeah. My point I was going to bring up, just looking at the roster. I mean, you got Jorgensen at 35, Yamane at 32, Yoshida at 37. I mean, you need another younger athletic guy that can play in the back line with Haak, that they trust, right? So maybe that's the move. You save the international spot, you use it in the summertime. But for me, like they just need a younger guy if they're going to play a 3-back and Hack's going to be in there. It's kind of like the U.S. men's national team. You can have, everyone complains about Tim Ream, and listen, Tim Ream can still play a ball and is still a leader, and so is Yoshida. But you need another young guy back there that covers ground, that can pick up stuff for people, especially if Vanny's going to shoot the wing backs if he's going to play a 3-back system. So
Yeah, it's the one position group that I have been super angry about throughout the course of Vanny's tenure because it's always been garbage. And then Yoshida came in and he raised the floor and he helped out Neil and Garces when we won the title, and then we got rid of Neil, which was our young project guy.
Yep.
But then this summer, it was like, all right, we're fixing this fucking giant mistake that has been this whole issue, and now you've got Glesnes, Haak, Yoshida, Rindov, and Garces to play around with in terms of formations and doing a bunch of stuff. I think Jorgensen, and we're all very.
I forgot about that.
He's gone. So
is he?
I think they're finalizing a contract buyout. I don't want to risk saying it too soon and like get very upset when he's back in my team's colors. But I think he's gone.
I don't think
Fair enough.
There's no need to keep him.
No, Philly, you gave him away. I totally forgot about that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wrong side of 30. Got to get rid. It's how it always works with them. They're like the Leonardo DiCaprio of the MLS. They just fucking anything that's that old just gotta go. It doesn't matter how pretty it is. Speaking of young players, Mateus Nascimento, he got extended. Very weird kind of thing where it was like Andrew was saying, Greg Vanney he wanted a striker. It didn't sound like this was going to happen. I think the Riqui Puig injury kind of nailed this down as something that they had to do. Operating in that U22 mechanism, they're extending the loan till 2026. There's some stipulation on it from the reporting that if he plays, I think it's 50% of the game or 50% of the minutes, it automatically triggers the buy option in the loan of $6 million. So we're sitting at the halfway point, being that World Cup time, and then the break. So the Galaxy essentially extended this loan until the summer of 2026. And if he balls out, he is your striker and you pay the $6 million, or you don't let him play the 50%. You have him rot for the rest of 2026 after the World Cup, and you go pick somebody up. And so that's where we're at. Mila, you've been very high on Nascimento. I think we all have. But where do you kind of sit with this particular contract and everything that's going on there?
Yeah, I think we've talked plenty on the podcast about what potential Nascimento could have and what he can offer to a Vanney system and how he fits, and it's all fine and dandy. But I don't know, my skin crawled a little bit when you said that we might just leave him there to rot, because we were just talking about a 10 mainly as that Puig fill-in, that DP spot. That means we have Ramirez as the really the only striker in the squad. We could move Payne still out there. We don't have much depth out wide still. So it's super scary to me that is a possibility, that we're just going to not really be positive or just sure that we want to spend the money on him, and then just have to deal with the consequences of our squad building after that, at least until we can go get that player. I'm just worried if we spend the DP and the 10, I guess they could push Royce up. That would be the other option I could see. But that spooks me, especially with the talent that he has.
Yeah. Felt like something they had to do with the injury, just because you're running out of time to fill spots. Brooks, when it comes to international players, right, you've scouted guys and you know how young talent works. This is a young player that hasn't played a ton of minutes for any team, let alone he just got his major chunk of minutes for the Galaxy. Is there anything in particular that you look at when you're looking at a guy like Nascimento for the Galaxy where you're like, this is the guy that either has it or doesn't in the 9 position? Is there a specific mold that you look at?
Yeah, I mean, when you bring over young internationals, I mean, you kind of saw Portland, they had David Ayala, and, he didn't quite work out for them. And there were some injuries there. Miami buying for $2 million. Portland's happy to get that off the books and to move on from him. But, you see a lot of clubs try with these young players, and Atlanta United's been successful with that. They brought in some young guys, sold them, Amarone, Thiago Almada, even though his club and the allegations there of, the money troubles they're having and all that stuff and whatnot. But when you identify a young international, like I tell everyone all the time, it doesn't matter if they come here and play pro soccer or college soccer or whatever, it's a transition. Like they don't understand we have all these different time zones and all this different stuff, and it's rough on the body and a different culture. And especially if these young lads away from home, only being 21 for the first time and adjusting, and, lifestyle is important. Like you need to put them around guys that are going to be there for them and be a mentor. And, some guys attach to that, and they really attach to the older leadership players, or someone takes the role and, guides the young player. And then there's some teams that where it's just kind of like a free for all. And the question in that Galaxy locker room, is there a guy that's kind of taking the leadership and taking him under his wing just to, help with the transition? So, but, taking a chance on a, obviously an under 22 signing, it's going to be that for the Galaxy. It's not a bad look, but it's always a risk, right? And, but like Andrew said, they're really doing their scouting. They're trying to identify players. Now they're starting to pick that up and find players to get, whether that's in the summer or now. But I'm at like, listen, he played, listen, he got 22 games played, 13 starts, over 1,000 minutes, 4 goals and 3 assists. I mean, that's not too bad for a 21, for a young guy, especially when everything just went wrong last year for the Galaxy.
Mhm.
So put players around him and let's see what he can do. And then maybe he can give you something in this season for 2026.
Yeah, I have no idea how I feel confident in Nascimento as a player. I think his technical skill is very high. Andrew, I already know that you're very pro this move for all the reasons that have already been laid out, but we talk about expectations. We talk about Nascimento being a good player. Do you expect him to rise to the occasion? Do you think this is a loan move that ends up being finalized where the Galaxy end up paying the $6 million?
I'm not sure if it gets to that point. I think the Galaxy would need to see something very impressive pretty quickly to go ahead and force them to make the hand, because $6 million is just a massive investment. And it really looks like Nascimento has until maybe the summer, so about half a season. And when you're looking at a compressed timeline and you need some pretty impressive production to justify a pretty impressive fee, it's like, it just feels like it's going to be crunch time for him. But I think when you talk about expectations, they might have changed from a Galaxy perspective as well with the news. There were those quotes of Greg Vanney wanting other types of players, but when I spoke with Nascimento for the first time and asked him about how he felt like he was fitting in the system, it's the same thing we've mentioned a little bit, that he feels like he's a Greg Vanney player, a Greg Vanney 9. And I think that's why the team brought him there. The scouting recruitment targeted him as someone who would fit a Greg Vanney mold, and that's why he's there. So in my mind, in my theory, one of many theories like we've already talked about, but it's that this loan extension was always the goal for the Galaxy. They probably wanted to see at least 6 months of Nascimento with Riqui Puig behind him, because like we talked about in Talking Galaxy on Tuesday, I do feel that they have pretty similar ideas on how football is played, the give and go idea, kind of a joga bonito. When you think about how, I love to say this, but how Dejan Joveljic used to contribute in the build-up in his first couple of seasons, it wasn't very nice. Whereas you see Nascimento, that's probably one of his strongest attributes, his football IQ, contributing in the build-up. And the idea, I think, was to see that with Riqui Puig, and that probably had a pretty high, lofty expectation. But suddenly you remove kind of the catalyst in that equation. The Galaxy's expectations for him might have to shift and lower, obviously. And it doesn't feel like, with Nascimento needing to show something so high but having low expectations, it just doesn't feel like the path is there for him to go ahead and earn the actual 6-month move. So in my head, it's an unfortunate situation for Nascimento. He just never really got the chance to show his best with an incredible creator at his backside. So without that launch pad, he probably doesn't earn himself that extension. And now the Galaxy are probably, in my eyes, going to be thinking about getting that 9 in the summer as a DP. But that's just what it looks like to me, with, all conjecture, obviously. But that's my read.
Nascimento, and when I look at U22 players and young players in general in the league, the one thing that I always try to focus on is how they play with the true greats of the sport. And Nascimento was the first player that came into the team and immediately clicked with Marco Reus. It didn't take any time. He immediately linked up really well. I think Mila was the first to kind of point it out of like, this guy's got pure technical skill. You can't teach, you can somewhat teach technical skill, but for a striker, you either got it or you don't. You're either a hoof and run player or you're a guy that can play with the ball at his feet. And Nascimento has that quality. In this league in particular, if you can find a U22 player and you can make him your starting 9, you immediately go into a different class of team. Your championship ceiling is that much higher. The Galaxy literally proved this with Dejan Joveljic. Dejan Joveljic becomes a DP. They can't afford him. He's gone. And then Dejan's a DP on Sporting Kansas City. They're fucking last. They're awful. But he has 17 goals. So if you can build a team and you can do what Wilkins is doing, which is just like putting certain mechanisms in place and having players who have immense talent around each other, eventually that'll work out. And Nascimento proved to me that he can play with the very best. So regardless of who comes in the summer, whether that's another 9 or if they get that 10 that we talked about, he can go and play minutes and do things with other players. And I don't have to think of, there's a feeling out period with Nascimento. I know what the level is. He's got a certain floor to him. It may not be there every game. That's where the youngness comes in, but I'm not worried like I was with Dayon in the first couple of years where I'm like, he just can't start games. He can't give us minutes that aren't 15-minute spurts because he can only do this one thing very well. Dayon eventually got some link-up play, and that's what catapulted him into a DP. It took him till he was 25. You're talking about a 21-year-old who has the ability to play with Marco Reus. You don't find that on trees. You know what I mean? Like that's a good thing to have. So I'm excited that he's back. I think it's a win-win for the club. He plays great. You activate the $6 million. Like I've been saying, it's not my fucking money, so I don't care. If I'm being completely honest with you, that's AEG's money. Like you can spend that like wildfire. You can burn it for all I care. It's not. I'm not paying this $6 million. If I did that, I would not be running a podcast. I would probably be doing a lot of different things. But we'll leave it there because I think I'm tired of talking about the Galaxy for now because I think we're going to have so many conversations about just them in general. And we don't ever really talk about the rest of the league. So it's time to check in with the rest of the league before the whole league kicks on with CCC and all the other random crap that they're going to do, like the 4 different competitions, the small one in the summer. We're going to have a bunch of random stuff happen and a World Cup. But let's talk about the rest of the league. Let's do an open forum. So whoever feels inclined to talk about a particular situation, a particular player, let's just do it. And
I feel like we got to talk about Inter Miami.
Okay, let's start with Miami and Co.
How many people did they sign?
6?
4?
I don't know. I actually don't know the number. The 6
I
was
think
just
it's
a guess.
4, and maybe one more on the way.
So they signed
6.
Regulon. It is
Oh,
6.
it's 6.
So they acquired.
Regulon.
So they acquired.
Oh, I forgot about Regulon.
Yeah, they acquired DePaul from Atletico Madrid fully.
Yeah,
they
I
have
wasn't counting
Regulon.
him. Okay.
They got Facundo Mora. Dane St. Clair came over as a free agent. They have McCall, who's on loan from Palmeiras. So that's a loan with a possible option to buy. And then they just bought David Ayala from the Timbers, a young Argentinian, for $2 million. So, yeah.
So crazy. We're pinching pennies over here.
The Brazilian center back. There's another guy, isn't there?
That's the guy.
That's the Paul. That's the loan.
The loan from Palmeiras, yeah.
Oh, stupid. What a stupid sport. The rich get richer. They really do. I don't know even if when we had Beckham, I think this is the most powerful selling point the league has ever seen. Come play with Lionel Messi. And they're just like, fuck it. I'll play for free. I don't really care. I was the goaltender of the year. I could have made millions. I could have been a DP level goalie. Nah, I'm going to take pennies on the dollar to go play with potentially the greatest player of all time.
Yeah.
That's really what it feels like.
St. Clair did, and he's the starting goalkeeper for the, Canadian national team, where he's up there for them. So, I watched Dane at the University of Maryland. You know what I mean? I remember watching him back in the college. And listen, the Regulon one, that's an older guy, obviously, but it's a friend of Messi's. And Ayala, obviously, Argentinian, young guy. I'm sure he's kicked around with the senior team, or even in the the youth national teams. He's probably run the Messi. The Rodrigo DePaul one's a good one, honestly, to acquire him, to get his loan from Atletico. He was big for them last year, and came up big in obviously MLS Cup for him. So, it's, it's rough. Listen, this is what people were thinking of you guys in the Galaxy in the 2000s. It's like, what can we do? Like, you got Robbie Keane, you got David Beckham, you got Landon Donovan, you had, just everyone under the sun. And it's like, what can we do? And, this may be their, I would say, I said in our podcast, it's successful if Messi wins, like they just go on like a dynasty run. Like if he wins MLS Cups until he's done, I mean, listen, he's already the greatest player in the world, but this just established him as like untouchable. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, there's Ronaldo fans out there, but what Messi's won and what he can do, it's just absurd. Like it's, and he's still playing well. Even when he's not doing what he needs to do, you put players around him and he makes them better. And listen, it's not just Inter Miami too. Don't forget David Beckham wants to win. So, and Don Garber's in the league are gonna bend the rules just a little bit. So Inter Miami are the place. And listen, they need that. They need people tuning in. There's no more payment for Apple TV right now. So maybe that'll entice people to watch more games because it just comes with the regular package. But they need people to watch MLS. And this is a big year for just domestic soccer in general, with the World Cup coming, and they're going to come see our obviously you got Germany training to Wake Forest. I think there might be a national team here locally in Michigan because we had a Club World Cup team come in here. But they're going to be experiencing the life and soccer of all these different training facilities, whether the collegiate, lower division, MLS training facilities. Like, we're showing the world how much we've developed here. So it's going to be interesting, but more money means more for the league, and then maybe teams can start building out players in each position with more money instead of just spending money on 2 or 3, 4 DPs. Maybe there's, you got more money, more cap room to spend higher amounts of money to get better players in. So
it's a byproduct of it just being messy, and it helps the league in a weird way that people don't want to admit, right? Because we're all haters, and it's in our own rights. Like, I don't want to see them win because they're literally like Darth Vader and the Clone Troopers, and just like that's just what it just feels like. There's an army of guys that he can just kind of get at his disposal. I look at that team now and I go, that's a better team than the team that just won. It's younger, it's faster, it's more athletic. They literally swapped out 2 old as dirt DPs, and I think they still have a DP spot, if I'm not mistaken. So they can still go get somebody. That's the worst part of this whole equation is they've built a super squad, which is very similar to, like you were saying, our Galaxy in the 2010s. And now you're sitting here and you're like, well, I don't even know what to do. Hope and pray they get knocked out by Atlanta and Brad Guzan every fucking year. Like, he retired, so we're screwed. We're screwed. It's over.
There's no hope.
There's no hope. If he doesn't get pushed into that net, I don't know what would happen to the league. Like, that saved a potential 5-year sprint here from Inter Miami and them.
I think the question is, do teams start to man up against these guys and just kick in? You know what I mean? Like, do you see more of that? Do you saw a little bit last year, but do you see more physical play against Miami and try to beat the crap out of them? You know what I mean? Like,
I think if it happens, it'll very quickly be protected.
Probably.
You know what I mean? Like,
they the bodyguard.
Yeah, dude, he's gonna sprint on the field. Someone tries to give him a 2-foot.
They have 2 bodyguards for Messi on the pitch.
Yeah, they did bring in DePaul. It's a good point.
They got the paid one, and then DePaul.
Andrew, do you have a MLS transfer that you kind of want to speak on or bring to the table?
Yeah, an interesting situation for me, and I think Brooks mentioned it. I don't know if it was early on the pod or before we went live, but the situation at San Francisco has been a little bit interesting. Losing Christian Espinoza, apparently because of some missed paperwork, someone fumbling the paperwork, the bureaucracy part of the game, and you lose one of your club legends, and now you're bringing in someone like Timo Werner, which is it's a pretty solid signing. It's one of those probably classic MLS signings that it's a FIFA move, I feel like, in a way, but he's one of those players that can have an impact. And you just think of that missed out connection between Espinoza and Werner. That would have been, something special. Christian, dishing it up to Timo Werner. So all of a sudden, San Jose are, a serious thing to look at. But I heard someone else mention now instead it's going to be Timo and Preston Judd. I think that was Peyton last week, but on Tuesday. But that's just a really kind of crazy situation. We talk about Miami right now, who are at the epitome of like efficiency and knowing exactly what they're doing. And then you go to the other coast and you see what's happening over there with them just not submitting the form. So it reminds me of Real Madrid, I think, trying to sign Lewandowski one year and the paperwork didn't go through, or it might have been Courtois, but there's just that situation, faulty paperwork. And, So you talk about people at the front office not doing their jobs. That's one of the most clear-cut cases there are. So really interesting. Maybe, the Christian Espinoza departure opened a door for Timo in the first place, and that's just them reacting. But it's just a funny situation when you look at the whole picture.
Smurf's going to Smurf, man.
There you go.
And the fact that it's a Bruce Arena-led team at this point in his coaching tenure just kind of fits. Like, I'm not surprised by any of this. Like, Bruce takes a lot of reign, right? And when he was with the Galaxy, it was okay. But everything post that 2018 World Cup stint has just been really, really tough for Bruce and everything around it. And obviously, big love for him. He got us a bunch of stars on the crest, but San Jose in the mud. We don't have them in our division anymore. Timo Werner is just one of those players where he's going to do some stuff. Mila and I have watched a ton of him in the Premier League and in some of the Bundesliga.
Well, that's the thing, though. I mean,
no, dude, he's going to do it.
I don't know. He's still going to do it. He's going to have his moments. There's no taking the moments out of Timo Werner. But I do think his profile will definitely thrive in this league. It's going to just see how he molds with those around him, and if he can put the ball in the back of the net, which tends to be his biggest issue since leaving the German league for the first.
I mean, the craziest thing with San Jose is you've gotten rid of Oscar Verhoeven, your young academy product that everyone was all crazy about. U.S. youth national team experience. He goes to San Diego, so they take him, they acquire him. You don't get the Espinoza stuff over the line. It's almost like how Blackpool screwed up Duncan McGuire stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like, when he was trying to get acquired from Orlando City, they declined Joseph Martinez option. Chance Cowell, a young up and coming academy product, traded to Real Salt Lake, and that's a totally a Real Salt Lake move right there. Just listen, there's a good prospect that we don't have in our academy that we can get from someone else's academy. Sure, we'll pay it, because we don't spend a lot of money, but we make smart acquisitions and try to sell players on to recoup that money. No Mark Anthony K, obviously he's done. He's getting old. Just a lot of different things, and the other guy you get is Nate Crockford, which is fire kid, played at Wisconsin. Obviously he's not going to be your starting goalkeeper. He's just probably your second or probably your third goalkeeper, I imagine. But, Werner and Crockford are your two acquisitions. I mean, I think there's still more that Bruce needs to pull off there, to be honest with you. But it's typical San Jose, I feel like,
Yeah, in typical Bruce Arena, they're going to score a ton of goals. Like, they still have Arango for now. He might leave. And they will. Dude, they're going to score goals, but also Warner is going to put that ball into the San Jose airport. Like, that will happen. It's right in the back there. I'm telling you, he's kicking one. It's going straight into the airport. It might cause some delays at SJS.
Yeah. Well, Craig mentioned in our Facebook group, how many times is he going to be offsides? That's the question.
Dude, I don't know if you guys have been there, but their field level is like very similar to LAFC's, where it's like suites are on the field. Like you are pitch side. So that's exactly what I was thinking. Like, he's going to be offsides, and there's going to be someone sitting there like, dude, I'm offsides here. Like, how are you with me on the line here? Like, this is rough. But I want to switch the transition here from Espinoza being on San Jose to being on Nashville, because Nashville was really good last year, and they have two of the top expected goal and assist players in the league now. Like, Espinoza had ridiculous underlying stats. Mukhtar is one of the best MLS players of the last 10 years. And then you add that in with, if he stays, is it Sturridge? I think I'm pronouncing that right. The English guy, who I think he was up there with Messi with goals in the league last year. They have quickly become a powerhouse in the East, that I think got weaker this offseason. So Nashville is a good city for a soccer team to be good in. It's Espinoza off a faulty not triggering his. Sorry, that's ridiculous. But Nashville comes out as the real winner. They send Schaffelberg, which we'll talk about in a second, to LAFC, and they get Espinoza, who's been, one, more healthy, and two, I think a little more productive in a position of need for them, because they really haven't had production off of their wings as much as I like Schaffelberg, and I think he gives you a certain level of product in terms of speed and capability on the wings, but he's not the same level of creator that Espinoza is. Brooks, if you want to talk about Schaffelberg to LAFC here and what he provides, I'm down to hear it because I won't say anything nice since they're our neighbors.
So what I'll do is I'm gonna kind of just touch on Nashville a little bit, and then I'll move to Schaffelberg. Mike Jacobs does a really good job at Nashville. He goes to the draft. He finds players in college. He finds domestic players in the league and acquires them, or guys that have played in the league, and he makes league acquisitions. He gets some international guys. You have a guy like Sam Surridge who, Wolves were interested in him, and I believe a championship side was interested in him, or maybe another Premier League side that's lower in the table. You got people where you have flexibility where you can sell him and then acquire and make money, and then you can go out and buy someone else if you want to or whatnot. They don't have a very good academy. It's trying to be grown a little bit. They're trying to do a better job. But Shaq Muhammad, you acquire from Orlando City. You get Thomas Williams as well. And then Espinoza, and you're kind of just starting to fill in holes a little bit. So Nashville, they do a very good job of not going crazy and overspending, but getting the most out of all the players they acquire. And then in return, move to Schaffelberg when you sell him to the Galaxy for a lot of money in return, which I think the fee, I want to say they're paying Schaffelberg over $1 million, or
Yeah.
It's a good one for LAFC. If Bouanga gets sold at some point, like there's been a lot of Liga MX clubs that still want him. If he has to go and you sell him to get money and you still get a pretty good price for him at his age, you have a guy that can slot in and start along with Martinez, who's been starting. So you don't really lose a step in that front three position. And he's got experience in the league. He's been playing since he was a young guy, since he was at Toronto FC, and then he had some pretty good moments at Nashville. Canadian men's national team, player that can start. So he's a proven guy, and it was a really smart acquisition from John Thornton and those guys. The question is Marc Dos Santos going to get it done? He didn't get it done in Vancouver. So that's the question. This is his second go around. And I think if you're Galaxy fans, which you guys are, you're hoping that Marc Dos Santos doesn't figure it out and he messes up again and Greg Vanney figures it out and you guys look like you come out the winners in this one, because it's very possible that Dos Santos, who's had a lot of assistant MLS coaching experience, but not a lot as a head coach. And when he was at Vancouver, wasn't successful.
Very interesting from an LAFC perspective to not just go get the next best thing and promote from within. That's a really interesting hire for what they perceive themselves to be, which is this big, they're the top dog in the league in terms of global experience. Like, could they have not have just waited and picked up a young talent in Europe, or could they have gone and got a Nancy style manager? Like, it just felt like there was food on the table for them to go and take a leap.
Yep.
But a lot of the moves that they made this summer and in general, like just this whole tenure where they should have been league winners over and over and over again, like especially in the West, which wasn't very good.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like they do a lot of, we're going to beat the horse until it's dead with a lot of our signings. And Schaffelberg, while I like him a lot and the speed, and he's got very good technical skills for the amount of speed that he has, it's nothing different than Bouanga.
Yep.
You know what I mean? He's not they can't play on the same pitch together. Like him, Son, and Schaffelberg is not going to work. So I just find them, they just paid, high level TAM money on a guy that doesn't really fit. They're still going to play counterattacking. They haven't gone to possession at any point here. They promoted within, which means they're probably going to play a similar system. I feel like they've got young guys in their system that just can't get in because they've maxed out this level of like guy, like their center back depth is like weird aging guys that they've brought in, same up top. And Andrew, your countryman is there still, correct?
That's right. Yeah. Ordaz.
And his minutes were significantly dropped with Son coming in, right?
Mhm.
So you bring in Schaffelberg into, like you said, Martinez is already there and Ordaz is there. It just feels like they're cutting off pipelines of guys that have proven that they can give you real minutes. And they did that with a couple of loan moves this last year. So for a team that can absolutely go win an MLS Cup, like they're poised, right? They have Son. They went to a semifinal. They were a penalty shootout away from a final, right? Or a penalty shootout and beating San Diego away from a final. For them to make these moves, it's really bizarre to me. Like you're half in, half out, kind of. Like you've got Son, which means that you should be aiming to win it all, but they haven't made the acquisitions, which I'm totally fine with, right? Like this is a Galaxy fan being like, you continue to fall into your own pile of shit. But I don't know.
Me talking about United.
Yeah, it's very similar.
This is exactly the same thing.
I think Mark Dos Santos has too big of an ego where he won't play counterattacking football. I think
You think he'll try to hold possession?
Yeah, he will.
Okay.
He will. He's if he hasn't learned from his mistake at Vancouver, I think he will try to be ballsy and more ballsy. I think Cherundolo was comfortable in his own skin to play that style because you have to be. I don't know if Mark Dos Santos is comfortable in his own style to do that because you can tell, like, listen, Greg Berhalter will never play counterattacking football. Like that is not comfortable in his skin to play that type of to do that. He has to have the ball and he has to be imposing on his opponent. Like, we dictate the game, you don't. That's the question with Mark Dos Santos. And listen, like with Ordaz and Martinez in Boanga, who's to say, because John Thornton's done this before, where you sell Boanga and one of the young guys and now everything makes sense. You know what I mean? You go and get maybe another guy that doesn't have to slot in and want to play a lot. And listen, I think there's an interesting world where you could play Boanga on the right, Schaffelberg could play on the left, and you could have a 4-3-3, or you can play Schaffelberg as a wingback if you wanted to, because he's played that before. There's some versatility, but I don't know, Andrew. What do you think? Oh, he's chatting.
Okay. It's all good. Brooks, because you have insights within the US sphere. The last one that I want to talk about is the bizarre departure of Kellen Acosta from Chicago. Like a guy they brought in to be the guy there with Greg Berhalter is now on his way to Poland and a team that's in 10th. So really bizarre situation. I think you've got maybe a little of insight on why this move is happening.
Yeah, listen, the contract for me, like, if there's one other big club that's just still it's cleaned up a little bit, but just still a mess, is the Chicago Fire. Listen, the owner has great intentions, but I feel like it's more of like, I own a team, it's a fun type of thing, not so much let's do this to win. I think he's starting to learn a little more with the transition. But I didn't think that the Kellen Acosta to the Chicago thing made any sense. I know from the beginning, people said, like, we want to build the team around you. Like, this is what it's going to, but that was old coach. Berhalter comes in. Yeah, Greg knows him from the U.S. men's national team. For me, I think Greg's coming off, listen, he's done well with Columbus, but he never won an MLS Cup. He did what he did with the men's national team. He won some trophies. He did all right in the World Cup. But there was chaos in the end, obviously, with all that Giorena stuff and whatnot. But, Greg's got a bit of a plan and an ego. He does things his way. If he doesn't see a fit for you anymore, it's time to go. And unfortunately, I think Kellen just got caught in the middle. Like there was we had plans for you, and Greg comes in and he doesn't see plans anymore for Kellen to be one of the main guys, and he wants to get younger and play other guys. I mean, you have some good, the Fire Academy do a very good job of bringing guys in. I mean, Orahell's a good player. He's gotten some good minutes last year, and he fits what Greg likes to do. But it's just rough. Like, for this to happen I mean, essentially, I know they reported last week, January 8th, for fitness testing. And for that to happen so suddenly, and then to try to pivot and make this move over to Poland is just a little rough. And I know from people have told me is that I believe it's a 12 or 16th month contract, but there's an option to get out of it if an MLS club comes a calling and they want to get Kellen from the Polish club. I forget the name of the Polish club, but I know they're when I check the table, they're mid-table in 10th place. So, and the question with Kellen is, I think he still has, 4 years left in his legs. He's 30 years old. The question is, what club and system does he fit? Is it a counter-attacking team or is it maybe something where it's not as much on his legs, where he can play with the young kid in the middle and he can help the young kid, but he can also direct stuff when he needs to. I think there's a spot for him in MLS. The question is where. And I think that's what Kellen and his agent are probably trying to figure out right now. But go to Poland, have a good rest of the Polish season. Maybe you help that club, move up the table and to get close to, European competition qualifying in Poland and see what you can do, but it's a rough one. I think the spot Kellen was in, unfortunately, with Chicago and just Greg having different ideas with what to do.
Yeah, that's a club that has constantly been in that kind of issue. But when you bring in a figure like Greg, like you're asking for this type of shuffling, and they've got some good pieces, like you said. I mean, they've got our buddy Omar Gonzalez, but Cyprus, I think, had 19 goals last season, or he was close to breaking 20, which is a great goal scoring record. And they also hold the biggest probably transfer card of them all, which is Lewandowski's discovery rights this summer. So they get to play. They get to play big city, big player, big new league. Kind of hold those cards. They can be like, hey, you know what? We're going to pair you with this other good striker. We've got this great U.S. coach. I'm not saying I think he's great. That's the pitch that they would make. And then they could go ahead and kind of shuffle the cards there. Or you sell Lewandowski's discovery rights for a stupid amount of money. You go and build towards the youth and you go in a different direction. You tell Greg, because I think he's also their GM, correct?
I think
he does both.
I think
he's the puppet master. So you've just got cards to work with. The Kellen Acosta stuff is just always sad. I really like him for some reason. I've always really liked Acosta. He's just one of those MLS players where I'm like, I think you've got something. And I don't know if he's actually ever had that something, but I've always been like, you've got that something, man.
The fire of a few cards as well. I mean, Chris Brady just signed a new contract. It was, his contract got raised. He's been a third string for the national team. I know people that represent him that want to get him over to Europe at some point. So they're gunning for that. And listen, you can get a good return for Chris. I think his contract's over $1 million now. Finally, he was one of the lower paid goalkeepers, but he had good numbers, for the last couple of years for the Fire. Growing pains the first year, but much better next year. I mean, are much better last year, and they wouldn't have been in the place they were without Chris, honestly.
Sure.
But that's another kind of, guy that they can sell. I think they just signed another Fire Academy player. They have Josh Cohen, who they just signed, was overseas. So if they sold Chris like this summer or at the end of next year, they could go with Cohen. So they have some options. It's interesting when the guys sign guys and you start thinking, well, what's the lifespan for some of these guys? And if the money's there for Brady and it's high, I don't think Greg's afraid to pull the trigger to say, hey, we'll sell Chris overseas if it's the right club, and the agents are like, yes, he wants to go to this club. So, but I know he loves the city of Chicago though. So.
Yeah. And Mila, they have one of our favorite players, Mr. Jonathan Bamba.
He's actually a good player for them, to be honest.
Yeah, he's great.
We found out about him in like 2018 and fell in love. And I haven't heard that name in a couple of years. I just had the Ratatouille meme in my head.
Every single year we did like a combined like career mode, like manager save on FIFA, and it was always it was always like 2 or 3 players. It was always Jonathan David, and it was always Bamba, and they always were on the wings together. And you always had You just watched that Instagram reel of the commentator, Derek Ray, and it was always Derek Ray saying "Bamba, stands Bamba." And so I love him as a player, but that's just my funny tangent on Mr. Bamba. Before we totally switch gears out of the MLS here, Brooks, I think you have more information on this in general, but Fresno, which is our California state, right, is city in California.
Yeah.
It's a city in California.
It is.
It's certainly
one
one
of
of
these
the
cities.
cities of all time.
is now not on its first attempt, not on its second attempt, but its third attempt to save a USL franchise to get it and stick there. So what's the information you've got on this?
Yeah, so just reading from the Fresno Bee, it says United Soccer League wants back in Fresno, and there's a signed letter of intent to prove as much. The league and the city announced during a news conference Tuesday that they've entered into a 1-year exclusivity period with Fresno to bring professional soccer to downtown. So it was always the one thing, from my understanding, that it was the soccer stadium, because USL wants soccer stadiums, but I know they can never get stuff done. And, I know people have told me that Fresno is an interesting place to have a soccer team. They just need a better stadium. So it's, listen, it makes sense, because I know guys, again, that scout in California. There's a lot of different pockets that, if you're in certain areas, it's, no one's making the 3-hour drive, to go down somewhere, or, to get to an academy or whatever. I mean, there's good pockets of players in that area. And I know Fresno is a really interesting area. Obviously, getting Northern California, there's a lot of pockets. I got a buddy that scouts there. He finds players there all the time. But yeah, another USL team in California. What do you guys think?
It's always interesting to see where these teams tend to pop up, but just why and the how. From my understanding, they almost have to have the soccer stadium, because that's the real reason why it's faltered for them in the past 2 times. But just our hometown team for Orange County, like having that soccer specific stadium and having a stadium where you can rely on a revenue stream when you're not in season is so vital, that if you don't have that, if you don't make it an epicenter for people to do things at, you will never, it just won't survive, because it's not the league that is primary here, which is the MLS.
Yeah. And I think to the point, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I think just to your point, Brooks, that it's a bit farther out, and not a lot of people might, like, that opportunity is huge. And I think USL tries to open up in these less, what's the word I'm looking for? Not
Smaller
as big cities. Yeah, smaller areas. To grow the game in those areas, and you get a more dedicated fan base usually, it seems like, or at least a better community, heart of the community for that. So I think it'll be interesting, and I think I saw something that they're trying to incorporate a women's team somehow too. I don't know if that. Yeah,
it's kind of part of the deal now. I think USL wants, if you get a championship or League One team, they want the USL Super League team in. They need to grow it. Sometimes what they'll do is they'll probably cut deals where, like, maybe we'll lower your expansion fee if you do both of them, and obviously that just makes your budget go up crazy, because you got to pay all the players and everything. So it said with the soccer stadium downtown, it says, according to the agreement, the stadium would have a minimum capacity of 7,000, with all pre-development costs paid for by the league. The teams would be run by an investment group being put together by Fresno Pro Soccer LLC and Adam Smith, the professional coach who led Fresno's original USL team, the Fresno Foxes, through its first 2 seasons. So
the one thing that really excites me about this whole thing, and it was a report, I watched the reporters, it was a 3-minute video. She said that the land that they are talking about doing is in Chinatown. Which tells you that they could do a lot of really cool things with the Chinese community and make it very embedded within their culture of whatever soccer team they do. And also Fresno, I've been there once. It's not like my go-to area in California, but I can tell you they have one thing, and that's Fresno State. And they have that as their kind of their anchor for a lot of their revenue. And for them to get a soccer team in there, I think it can bolster their local economy by like millions. It's a big figure that this could bring in for them. And so for the city of Fresno in particular, this could be a big step for them, and that's why they're going for it for a third time. Andrew, you get to watch some OCFC or OCSC, and you've done some reporting with them in terms of the local community building that they can do. Can you kind of elaborate on what that looks like from a USL standpoint?
Yeah, so the Orange County situation is really interesting because of the monopoly is the city of Irvine Incorporated. You guys, who grew up there, Mila and Dylan, you guys probably know a lot about that. But for example, Orange County, they don't own their own stadium. They have this lease agreement with the city. If they can't expand the stadium, they can't really host things too much outside of the season. The community that is there, it's a little bit more historic. It even predates OCSC back when they were the OC Blues. A lot of the people who are leading the supporter groups now, people that I'm good friends with, they started around like 10, almost 15 years ago at this point, supporting the team through them. And that it's just naturally expanded since then. And obviously having a home in Orange County, it's helped that group grow. It's given them like a fixed spot to play. But what the USL or the league has done to kind of develop that community is not as much. The club does do a really good job of, they do have a partnership with a local bar and they do have these pockets, but it's not as pervasive. A lot of people in Orange County still, they'll see an Instagram ad or someone will mention it like, oh, we have a soccer team here. The USL and whether it's a club side or the league side, there is, a lot of growth to be done. But I guess a little bit in Orange County's offense, they just don't have as much flexibility without owning their stadium. So interesting there. And the whole Fresno situation, it's with the stadium being the crux of it. It's a little bit, I don't know if kind of short-sighted is the word, but long-sighted with the plans that the USL has to go Division One. There was a statement I remember seeing last year where they might start requiring stadiums to be a minimum of 10, 15K to go ahead and get that D1 status. And something like 7,000 isn't going to cut it. So why are you going to build that, spend all that investment in developing something when in a couple of years you're going to have to either do something else, tear it down, expand it, or you're not D1 anymore and all of a sudden you're out of a league again and you don't have a team. So it's an interesting situation. Orange County, again, their stadium is 5,000. They don't even own it. If they do want to achieve that D1 status, they're probably going to have to move at some point. And it's an interesting thing for all the teams in the USL to navigate, and especially any new ones. And maybe a little bit of an unrelated point, but the USL working on expansion clubs, while at the same time, there isn't a players union agreement yet. These players don't have, which they're fighting for. We've seen a lot in social media. They're really advocating for themselves, but a good chunk of the players, it's something a little bit less than 20%, but they're making under like 20 grand a year. And all they're really trying to do is raise that floor for players. And if you offer someone, any ambitious soccer player, maybe 20 grand to live all the way out in Fresno and play for that team, it's just a difficult prospect as well until maybe you can increase that, that floor, which isn't going to be a crazy number, probably not cover the cost of living in California, even in a place like Fresno. But that's another massive thing that the league is dealing with is they want to go for D1, but at the same time, they're essentially stuck in an amateur almost system where players aren't earning enough to sustain themselves. And if they really want to, that to me is the definition of a farmers league. You have footballers with a second job, plumbers, literally all these jokes we hear about the French league, whatever it is. And that's what we have in the USL. And if they want to go to D1, they have to sort of change that standard. They have to come to an agreement with the players and then expand that to whatever franchise does develop. So an interesting moment in the USL, lots of potential, massive ambition, but still a long way for most teams in the league to go to reach what they want to achieve.
Yeah. It's rough. Like the clubs are getting it from both ends because it's the players that are pushing them. And the clubs are trying to fight with the league about the CBA. But then on the other side, the league is coming on the clubs to be like, you need to improve vastly, but where is the income coming from or for something for you guys to help us to build new stadiums? And, that's where the private investment group comes in. And from my understanding, a lot of clubs I know that are looking into expansion aren't crazy about this new private investment group and what the league's doing because they're essentially forcing clubs to use this stuff so then the private investment group can buy up the land around the stadium so they can own that, so they get all the money and not the club. So it's really interesting what's happening now, and I know a lot of clubs that want to come in are not crazy about that. They want to own their own stuff, and they need revenue to generate. Why do you see USL2 clubs pop up all the time? That's because essentially USL2 and USLW are funding the league because of how much. I think it costs like 50 or 60 grand to be in USL2 and USLW. So, it's not a great situation right now in USL. They need to figure things out. Are they expanding too quickly without the revenue, without the TV revenue? Probably. Will they get the massive influx of money from the World Cup, and will they get more followers because people will be curious about what it is? That's to be determined, right? But I will say this: the Fresno Bills in Chinatown, you got some cool places to go eat before you walk to the game, right?
Dang straight. I am currently flipping the battery out of my camera, so that's why my screen is off. But that's kind of my biggest issue with this one move in general is I think that the beauty of what this league could be is putting soccer teams in places in the US where there isn't one. And the idea that you've got in just the top league in the world, you've already got 4 teams now. The idea that you're adding an additional team on top of the USL, which I believe they have Sacramento, Oakland, Monterey, Orange County, and now you're going to have Fresno on top of that. It's a lot of teams with not a lot of market to really move in. And I understand the idea of maybe youth development and doing it in that way, but why couldn't this, we have a team in Vegas, right? Like that's the perfect opportunity. You don't have a MLS side in these places. Like that's the beauty of this league and where it should be is you're putting teams where you can build community. Like I just don't know if Fresno has that level of infrastructure where I can see them being able to back it. And also to Andrew's point, it's kind of an amateur league where the people that they're paying to do their marketing, their social media, it's free labor almost. And I've been in a position in a sports team where that's been my role. It's very tough to keep people, let alone to keep people in Fresno in general, but to keep people in a sports job in Fresno, you'd almost be asking for college kids. And so if your entire front office is college kids on internships and doing that stuff, there's only a certain level of ceiling that your business can go to, just from a business standpoint, not the sporting side. So I have reservations about why and the where, how. It's kind of to your point. It kind of sounds like this is more of the league is looking to be like Irvine Company and just buy as much land as possible.
Yep.
And we'll see how this all develops. I'm excited in general. Look, more soccer is not bad soccer. I don't want to make it be a Debbie Downer last point there, but find it interesting. Interesting to say the very least.
Yeah. Don't forget about AV Alta too.
Oh, geez. Wow.
USL League One. Yep. And then there's rumors that Reno, they had a USL championship team. That community, they couldn't get a stadium over the line. That's why they had to fold. But that could be back too. And Reno's an interesting area. You have that rivalry with Vegas. It's more of your territory on the west side. I've never been to Vegas, but I know it's that's the rivalry between those two cities. And it makes regional play a little easier if you start to get more into regional stuff, which, listen, my last point was just the epic downfall of USL in general was just they wanted to be a regional league. That's what USL League One was supposed to be. And, they botched that one. They couldn't make it a bus league, unfortunately. And travel costs just kill USL clubs. It's like, that's the big one. If you can cut down the travel costs and a lot of stuff, then maybe these clubs would invest the money in the stadium because they know they don't have to drop, a ton of money and, just keep losing a ton of money every year, so.
That might be the silver lining in a move like this, just like you're saying. You cut down on the most expensive thing that all these teams have to pay for.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, we've made it to that point in the show where everyone gets to plug all of the various things that they do. It's my favorite part because it means that I can stop talking for a little bit, which is great. Andrew, we'll start with you. You get to plug all of your stuff, and then Brooks will go to you and We Are Soccer. And then Mila, do you want to do our plug for the end of the episode this time? No, okay, I got it.
Somehow always manage to botch the plugs, so I'll let you do it, Dylan.
Okay, Andrew, you're up.
Yeah, appreciate it. I first and foremost, I want to say follow us here on Clash of Cosmos, the C.O.C network. Lots of really great stuff beyond, the LA Galaxy, beyond the MLS. Lots of really great European Premier League focused content over there. These guys, some really interesting takes. So a little bit of something for everyone here on the C.O.C network. So definitely tune in with that. But as for myself, you can find me at NGF Andrew on Twitter. That's probably my favorite place to be. Nuestra Galaxia Futbolera on Instagram. And every week, or as much as we can, we got an article for you on Los Angeles Sports Nation. You can subscribe there for free, especially as we get into the season. Get ready for some more access and coverage from the press box as we, get to figure out what exactly is behind these deals, what is the MO for 2026, 27. We're going to get a great chance to ask a lot of questions. So be sure to subscribe, follow all of that, and, let me know what you want to ask. Always want to bring, the fan into the press conference as much as we can. But yeah, Los Angeles Sports Nation and GF Andrew will hopefully have a better time covering 2026 and the 25. So tune in.
Thanks, Trey. Brooks, your turn.
Yeah, so Brooks Lambier with the We Are Soccer Network. Obviously, Craig Hearn, my buddy who is the owner of We Are Soccer, will come on and podcast with Dylan about Premier League and some other stuff. But you can find us on the We Are Soccer Show on Instagram, on X. We have a Facebook group. We have a page in a private Facebook group. Everyone's more than welcome to join and follow. We have a Substack newsletter called Free Kick, which we try to get it out once a week. It's a bunch of different things we just write about that happen around the world. If it's MLS, if it's interesting European articles, we also post video content we do. So I'm constantly doing interviews. So some of the most recent interviews I've done, I interviewed the head coach at Florida State women's soccer, Brian Penske. I've got a few other interviews coming out with a local legend here, a guy named George Faulkner, which should come out this weekend. He wrote a book. He's good friends with Lexi Lawless. He was actually a big guy getting 94 World Cup to Detroit. And he's been involved with NASL and a lot of different levels of U.S. soccer. You guys can follow us on all the social medias. And then one thing to note is we are trying to build a We Are Soccer store. So like with clothes and such, if you go look our latest Substack, we put a link to it at the bottom. Craig's designing some shirts, some interesting ones. We got a Zlatan one. Nice. It's an AC Milan one, but it's a cool one. So we're coming up with different, stuff with We Are Soccer on it, some generic stuff. So Craig's designing some stuff, but definitely give us a follow, give us a like and a share. And we have a podcast as well on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. But we appreciate the support from you guys. We love coming on the C.O.C network to do collaborative content. And also our YouTube page. We got 33,000 subscribers, live stream. We do a bunch of different stuff. So give us a follow, please. And we appreciate it.
You guys are constant professionals. Look at you. You're literally battling like hay fever right now, going through the plug section. And really, if anybody made it to this section, like you guys really do a very similar job to what we do in terms of overall content of soccer. And within the US, there are not a lot of creators that are like us. It's very segmented, or we only hit one section. But I think that you guys, similar to us, do a lot of great work in terms of covering the sport and doing it in a bright light. And that's why I love this collaboration. I love having you on to get your knowledge from a scouting perspective. I don't think there's many people in the world that have that experience. So it's very cool to have you on, and we always appreciate it. Andrew, as our reporter, you make life a lot easier when I can ask you all of my technical questions about contracts and all that stuff. So always appreciated having you here as our continued guest. And you should check out all of Andrew's stuff. It's very good. He still has that new YouTube video up, so you should go check that out. Go check out We Are Soccer. Me and Mila, we do this shit every fucking day, dude. Like every day we just live, breathe, and shit soccer and content. So give us a follow, do all that fun stuff. 182, we're going to get to 200 by the end of this month. That's my goal. So we We appreciate you guys listening, being a part of this. It's going to be a good year in Galaxy Land. It's going to be a good time for We Are Soccer, and we'll have a continued collaboration as we go here. So this has been Clash of Cosmos, episode 33. I'm Dylan. That's Mila. That's Mr. NGF Andrew. And that's Brooks from We Are Soccer. And we will see you guys in the next one.
LA are the champions. They're going to go alone. Still back. What a goal. It's 6. They just cannot stop scoring. The volley from Votto. Yes. San Jose carved open with a world-class pass from Riqui Puig.